I'm standing at my sister Lily's wedding reception, the air thick with tension. My parents are chatting with an elderly couple, and I overhear my father say, Emily couldn't find a husband, so she joined the army. She's been playing at it ever since. The words hit me like a bullet, 16 years of dismissal and mockery boiling over inside me. I'm Emily Thompson, 36 years old, and I've spent 16 years building a military career that my family knows nothing about. Growing up in a small, coastal town in Maine, our family seemed perfect from the outside. My father, Henry, was a strict and traditional fisherman, believing that a woman's place was at home. My mother, Rose, was a meek housewife who always went along with his views. Lily, my sister, for years younger, was the apple of their eyes. She was gentle, obedient, and followed the path they set for her, studying nursing at a local college. From a young age, I was different. I was fascinated by the military, a passion sparked by my grandfather, George. He was a World War II veteran, a man of few words but great wisdom. While my parents focused on Lily's achievements in school, I would sit with grandfather on the porch, listening to his stories of bravery and sacrifice. He saw the potential in me, giving me his old dog tags and telling me to follow my dreams. In high school, I joined the JROTC program, much to my parents' dismay. My father would scoff, saying it was a waste of time, and my mother would worry about my future. Lily, caught between family loyalty and sisterly love, would offer half-hearted support. One night, after a particularly harsh argument with my father, I called grandfather. With tears in my eyes, I told him about their refusal to support my dreams. He simply said, Emily, I've saved for something like this. I'll help you. Thanks to grandfather's support, I got into the Naval Academy. When the acceptance letter arrived, my parents pretended it didn't exist. The night before I left, I found a letter from grandfather under my pillow, encouraging me to be strong and follow my heart. Only Lily saw me off at the dock, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and sadness. The Naval Academy was tough, both physically and emotionally. While other cadets received letters and care packages from their families, mine were mostly from grandfather and occasional short notes from Lily. I threw myself into my studies and training, determined to prove myself. After graduation, I was deployed on my first mission. I called home before leaving, hoping for some sign of support, but my mother only asked when I'd be back for Lily's birthday. Over the years, I climbed the ranks. I developed a talent for strategic planning, leading several successful missions. But every time I called home with news of my promotions, my parents' responses were lukewarm at best. After being promoted to captain, I decided to stop seeking their approval. I focused on my career, sharing only the most basic details with them. Then the wedding invitation came. Lily was getting married to Tom, a kind-hearted man I'd only briefly met. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I was stunned. We'd grown so distant over the years, living in different worlds. But I agreed, thinking it might be a chance to bridge the gap with my family. As the wedding day approached, I faced the usual barrage of criticism from my mother about my appearance and my single status. At the rehearsal dinner, my father introduced me as someone doing paperwork in the Navy, and the guests laughed. Tom's father, a retired naval officer, seemed to sense there was more to me, but I didn't have the chance to talk to him. On the wedding day, the bridesmaids' comments about my military career and my mother's constant matchmaking attempts made me feel like an outsider. Lily, sensing my discomfort, tried to comfort me, but it was too little, too late. During the reception, as I listened to my father's cruel words, I felt my resolve breaking. But then, Tom stepped in. He snapped to attention, saluted me, and said, "Rear Admiral, ma'am." The room went silent. My father's face turned pale, and my mother dropped her glass. Tom continued, "Rear Admiral Emily Thompson, currently the youngest in the Navy and one of the few women to reach this rank. Her last mission saved 25 sailors and civilians." People around the room gasped in disbelief. I stood there, stunned. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of my achievements being recognized. I looked at my parents and said, "I've tried for years to make you see my worth, but you were too stuck in your ways. Every promotion, every success, I've had to hide because you couldn't accept my choices." My mother began to cry, saying they were just worried.
But I knew it was more than that.
They had a narrow view of what a woman should be, and I didn't fit into that mold. Lily looked at me with wide eyes, asking why I hadn't told her. I explained that I didn't want to put her in the middle of our family's conflicts. Tom's father stepped forward and said, "As a military parent, I understand the fear, but our children's paths are their own. Emily has served our country with distinction, and that should be celebrated." Slowly, my father extended his hand, saying, "I was wrong. I'm sorry." It was a small step, but it was more than I'd ever expected. Lily hugged me tightly, saying she was proud of me. In the days after the wedding, we began to rebuild our relationship. My parents asked questions about my career, and I shared some of my experiences.
It was awkward at times, but I could see a change in them.
6 months later, I was awarded a medal for my service at a naval base. My parents were there, beaming with pride. It was a long and painful journey, but finally, they saw me for who I really was. I've learned that sometimes, the battles at home are the hardest, but with courage and time, even the deepest wounds can heal.